Right, everyone, it is here. The old world has returned in physical format. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the Total War series, but my goodness, this is what we've been waiting for. Now, just to give you an idea of the scale of just this box set, I've currently basically got my camera as high up as I can get it and still keep it stable, while simultaneously I can't actually see my screen. So if anything knocks or goes off, I have no idea until quite a while afterwards. So I hope I managed to keep myself nice and balanced and, in frame. I do apologise if I go off. So this is Warhammer the Old World. As you know, I do not get anything for free, okay? Everything that I do is paid for by myself or paid for by people who ask me to build models for them, but even then, when I build models for people, I'm not doing it as a professional thing. I'm doing it because I want to make videos. So these kind of things, are expensive for me. And I do it because I believe that people watching get value. Now, that said, maybe you've seen a video of what's in this box and you're already hyped for it. So this is the Old World, and it is the Kingdom of Bretonnia edition. The models inside, as I understand it, work from the concept of dukedoms. So unlike the old Bretonnia, where you were encouraged to go completely over the top with colour schemes and different appearances, the idea is that you try and keep them harmonious, basically. So I am very excited to have a good look in this box. It looks lovely. So this is £155 if you buy it fully, basically. So if you buy it for full price. So, right, well, I've just realised straight away. So let's get ourselves up and running. I'm just very, very excited to open this box up and have a good look inside and see kind of what's going on with it. Now, of course, you see, this is the thing. I mean, if we compare this to the Horus Heresy box set as well, in the Horus Heresy box set, you literally just get two armies. Well, I say literally just get. I mean, it's an amazing box set, as you've seen from my videos. Ooh, I should have done this before, shouldn't I? So, in this regard, we are very much looking at something quite spectacular, aren't we? The fact that it's not even like the full game, it's one side of the game. Now, of course, there's a benefit to that because a lot of people still have their old world armies. I can't remember the place that did it, but there was a person who was basically dedicated to keeping the old world alive with continuing the rules. You may have heard that some commentators felt that Games Workshop would be inappropriate when they told them to cease and desist. But I think that, from my point of view, I don't think it was done... well, of course it was done deliberately. But I think it was very much along the lines of, please don't use official Games Workshop art. And I believe that person has now actually been able to, put things back out there. So I hope that's carried on. I hope that person's done it. Anyway, so the Warhammer Old World community still exists. And in a lot of ways, we are not looking at new models, so you may have seen these before, you may not have done. So let's have a look at what we've got here to begin with. So first of all, simple things like missile and magic and flame effects. So these are the kind of things that you need to obviously play a game. I don't think I need to go too far into what that is and how to use it at this stage. I'm not playing a battle, unfortunately. Let's move on from there. And of course, we have movements now still in, inches. I said, as someone who prefers metric, I'm pleased that they haven't gone metric and they've stuck to inches. Partly because, well, it's the old world. You kind of feel like it should be inches because it would be wrong if it was metric. It just wouldn't make sense to me. I'm being weird there, aren't I? So there we go. We've got, but again, these, the old school, they've been around for ages, aren't they? And they've still got that annoying little bend in one of them. I don't know what it is, but one of them is always damn well bent. Oh, I'm just going to check I'm actually in centre. Yeah, I'm still on centre. I was worried I wasn't. So, yeah, yeah, there we go. So, yeah, as someone who's a bit of a metric person, I'm pleased that they're actually in inches. Now we're getting into what this box is all about, and it's the army itself. Now, I think it's very important to sort of remind ourselves that some of these models are old. Now, looking at this, so hopefully you can see this, 2003. So, I don't know if, I'm going to assume that is literally when these models were first created. Now, 2003, that's pushing my brain back quite far. I'm not joking about that. As in, were these even like computer generated molds? These potentially might still be. Gosh, 2003, were they still making hand molds back then? It feels like they were. And it's very interesting to think about that, isn't it? So, but let's have a look. Let's take them for what they are. Let's judge them on how they look, what their quality is. We know that these models have existed for a long time in some cases. Do we look at them? Do we feel that they hit the quality that we would expect of modern Games Workshop? I think that is a fair judgment at this point. It would be easy for me to get excited about the fact that Old World is back and allow myself to basically engage in praise for the sake of praise. And I'm hoping you kind of agree with me on that one. I shouldn't do that. It is very important that I do not do that. So, what do I feel without nostalgia? Do I feel I am happy with what I'm seeing? So, that's a big question, isn't it? So, let's look at, say, some of the details on things like the jackets here of these men-at-arms. We can have a look at them. We can see that there is the kind of the flow of the inner robes. You've got the kind of padded leather jerkin on. Is it a jerkin? I don't know. On the outside, it's a difficult one from my point of view. If I went to someone else who makes something like this, let's say that I go to someone who does the French and the English wars of the medieval period, and they decided to create some models for that. Now, that would be the closest to Bretonnia without it being someone who makes fantasy models like that. So I hope you get what I mean there. So if I took these and compared them to a manufacturer who does medieval real world models, and I put them in side by side, would these be better quality? Well, to be quite honest, if we ask that question, if these were made by hand and we took something that was made using the computers, we may potentially say that the other manufacturer had a higher quality miniature. So in that regard, I have to kind of be cautious. It's not that I don't like them, I love them. But of course, these evoke nostalgia within me simply by looking at them. They create that feeling that I should, be happy that I'm seeing this. But of course, nostalgia can blind us and make us say things are amazing when they're not. So there are some little annoyances right away. Okay, the mold lines are very heavy on them. You know, they are a lot heavier. These are going to need some cleaning up. You know, so potentially not for the faint-hearted. The faces, they're, you know, they seem okay. They're in nice enough poses. They don't look like they're odd, for want of a better word. But I reckon if we, again, think about things like head size, Games Workshop in the past went for larger head to body ratio, which I believe is referred to as being the heroic proportions. So, you know, these kind of things we're well within our right as any collector to ask about. What I like is things like this. You have these wide flat areas to put your own heraldry on. You know, so that's a very old school thing. We appear to, as far as I can tell, have choices and options right within the sprue for head types. If I pull out another one, we've got, you know, a few little bits and bobs that we can use. Let's have a look. So yeah, we've even got like a helmet that isn't actually you know, attached to a head. So that's, again, little things that you can use to decorate your bases. So if I were to just kind of say, okay, so they're the same, aren't they? Yep, so we've got those ones. Now let's just check this here. This looks like a different one, doesn't it? Let me just, oh no, I'm not, I'm just looking at it from upside down. Yeah, so we got a lot of these ones, which means that basically we have 4 body plans for the men-at-arms. So 4 body plans in a very, very clearly defined pose, meaning that really, in order to make things look different, you really are going to have to make sure you use a good set of heads, use the full range of halberds and whatever these are. They're probably not called that, are they? I'm probably using a term that someone's probably screaming at me and saying that's not what they are. Anyway, so let me just gently lift these out carefully. Now, let's look at our next set of options. So the last time I actually saw Bretonnia, like men-at-arms, by the way, they were in metal. They were my brother's army years ago. So the fact that they're plastic is, you know, positive, but that's because I kind of really stopped collecting Oldhammer long before it collapsed and disappeared. Now, let's start looking at something like this. So let's really get our sort of teeth into things like this. So again, we've got our bowmen. You can see as well their positioning has a certain amount of dynamics. It's really that traditional old Warhammer, you know, the hand attached to the body. You know, there's that always bothered me, to be quite honest. I really hated that because it made painting a pain. It just made it so easy to splodge things over. It also is, when you think about it, hand to the body is probably not how a professional bowman actually shoots anything as well. It's probably more outwards from the body. Not, you know, I'm sure if you are a professional bowman, I'm probably doing 2 things here. I'm probably using the wrong term for what you are, and second of all, I'm assuming a position based upon video games. However, I hope I'm getting that right. So, you know, in some ways, the fact that these are all the miniatures, they lack the dynamic appearance. We are placing body parts closer to the model in order to improve stability. So those kind of things, you know, are happening. So in some ways, yes, it's a nostalgia, but by the same logic, could they have redesigned these models? I know they were kind of trying to probably really save money. Again, 2003 on the sprue. Potentially, if I went back and really looked at it, that's when the last Bretonnia range update happened. Can you imagine a range, you know, your like a core range not updated for 20 years? So, you know, assuming that I'm right about that, I mean, I'm assuming the 2003 is exactly what it appears to be, a declaration of the date. Some interesting features on this sprue. So obviously we've got some spikes, so basically to protect the bowman. I always find that a very frustrating things about Warhammer battles. There was no excess pieces, basically, so there was no kind of like you know, anyone who's going to battle plans and structures things, and they don't just find a nearby hill and plop themselves on it unless it's a, you know, an ambush or a short notice battle. So things like that add character. As with the rest, again, we appear to have 4 body plans that repeat. No doubt about that, so not sure what I can say about that inherently. I've just noticed there is actually like this brazier with brazier, I don't know how to say that. It's for fire arrows, which, you know, maybe you would expect. Okay, now let's carry on. Okay, I'm probably really teasing you because there's like a wing thing here that's a newer model, I think, and I'm taking my time to get to it on purpose. I want you to wait. So let's pull out the horses. Now I'm going to pull out the horses because Games Workshop horses are potentially some of like the least good looking horses I've seen. I've seen far more beautiful ones than these. Now if I were to look at that horse there, just the body, because I'm not going to start breaking things apart, if I were then to go and find a newer horse, I would potentially find something far better looking than that. It's, you know, again, it's not that I'm not happy with the model, but I am, you know, again, it's things like this, these kind of line updates that I feel would... Ooh, shaking my camera, I shouldn't do that. I should do some, you know, like me, again, it's that, well, could the line have been updated in certain places? And I don't know. I mean, it's definitely a conversation to have, isn't it? Okay, so that, like, I mean, basically you've got different, by the look of it, body plans of horses, so they're not all going to look the same. I'm not going to get them all out, and I think it's kind of very self-explanatory at this stage that, you know, I personally find old Games Workshop horses, probably when I was younger, I was in awe of them. But now it's that too many body parts are attached to things like clothing parts. So from a new thinking point of view, from a painting point of view, it's just, you know, I think they could be better. But again, I don't know. I'm torn between the fact that I like the models from a, wow, it's old Hammer point of view. But part of me feels that there are, you know, far superior appearances and things now. Now, what have we got here? We've got some heads and wings. Now, just give me a second, because they're obviously, unless I don't think they're attached to those. I think they're proper horses, not Pegasi. So it's one Pegasus and a Pegasi, possibly, or Pegasuses. Pegasus sounds wrong, doesn't it? Right then. Right, okay, you know what, let's look at what we've got kind of on the top here. Let's have a kind of look at some of these things. So here is a Pegasus. And you can see that although, again, this is from the 2003 stamp, if you compare it to the other horses, at least it matches. It might seem odd to say, but if nothing else, at least they feel like they're part of the same army. They're not kind of like so radically better that they don't fit. So I suppose it's always a big risk when you're taking like old models. If everything's from the same era and from the same range, it's okay. They're probably going to gel and fit together. But if you gain from multiple years, then there's a good chance that they're going to seem, you know, off. Anyway, so yeah, I think it's obvious that we get like wings clipping into here. So we've got main bodies, and then over this side we've got things like the wings. So I'm going to have a look at the quality of the wing pattern. I personally feel that something like that is a good tell about whether or not, you know, we'll class it as a good model. So you can see, hopefully you can see, it's got some nice patterns to it. The individual feathers are clearly defined. As we get to around about here, well, they somewhat kind of bleed together. So, you know, again, that might be because this was not made as a 3D model, but on a computer, but made by hand. And, you know, therefore you could potentially find things, you know, not quite as detailed as they could be. We have some, you know, nice detail on that horse's face. We got some, you know, and I think the thing is, like, patterns like this continue from the men-at-arms. Again, that helps, you know, bring it in and make it all feel like the same army. So in that sense, I'm happy that they feel like they belong together, but as I said, I think these are from the same era. So if you're from the same era, then the probability is it was designed, you know, with matching in mind, basically. I'm standing up from my desk now because, aside from anything else, my back's like cracking. Okay, so looking here, now what we have is obviously the champion and the standard and the musician, I'm going to assume, from the kit of men-at-arms. Again, things like this just add a bit of character to the unit. You want those kind of things in particularly in a fantasy army. Oddly enough, though, I was always of the preference of putting the standards at the back of a unit. Started doing that after a while because I actually feel that, although there was a point where standards would be at the front, I don't think in certain old armies, again, I could be wrong about this, I could just be confusing cinema with history, but I kind of recall that although banners were like a rallying point, they could also frequently be more like signalling things. So, you know, like confirming orders and things like that by shaking it around and things. I've seen that done before, but again, you know, that could be me confusing what they actually did with the past. So, you know, sometimes it is quite interesting seeing like banners and things. But yeah, whether or not you would put them in the front rank is quite an interesting debate. And I don't think it really matters for game purposes, does it? Because if the banner bearer dies, someone picks it up or it gets stolen. But that's simple. We've got some nice features on here, by the way, to add a bit of character. I'm not sure what this chain is for, so I'll have to have a good look and see what that actually does. We've got pipes, we've got barrel kegs, we've got like lumber and things like that, so we could have some interesting concepts. This guy looks like he's got a jester head, which is really interesting. We got a little hound. Again, you can tell it's like an older model because it's not amazingly good looking. I assume it's a hound. I mean, it could be something else, couldn't it? But yeah, we've got what looks like a drum, top of the standard. A bow here, because one of these is obviously a bowman, because there's the champion, the standard, and the musician. So one of them is obviously a bowman. This gentleman is particularly portly. And, you know, so again, there's quite interesting features available. Let me say again. I'm trying to not shake the camera, but because it's so high up, it's really easy to shake it. Okay, how many of these do we have? 1, 2, 3. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean, however, that these aren't... like one of these might be for the bowman, basically. So it could be for different units, for different purposes. Okay, whew, getting there. Right, cavalry. So the heart of any Bretonnian force is our cavalry. We couldn't have a Bretonnian force without it. It would feel very strange to actually have a purely peasant Bretonnian force. The last time I saw plastic Bretonnian cavalry was in Warhammer. Would have that been 3rd edition, Bretonnian versus Lizardmen? So these aren't the ones from then. So these are like, again, 2003. So again, I'm pretty certain at this point that all of these were made together. They're obviously going to go on the horses. Options. So we appear to have simply, lances. It's fine, in a sense that it's not a problem that they're all lances, but part of me feels like, actually, wouldn't it have been nice to have a different type of weaponry? Maybe there is. I don't see anything. We've got that traditional kind of look for Bretonnians, the, armed themselves, paid for their own equipment, their heraldry, is their own. So, they have all of these decorations that set them apart. You could paint each one to be unique, suggesting that they've all kind of joined together and banded together, or you could basically suggest that they've all come from this, like sworn their fealty to one particular duke and, become harmonious in colour schemes. So, and again, you've got the open shield, so you can paint things to your heart's content. If you're particularly good at freehand, you could go for it. The standard musician are on there. It's obviously, that's the champion's arm. We have little shields that would probably go on their chest. And again, you can see the poses are very old school, tight to the chest, moulded into the rest of the body. Now, don't get me wrong, they experimented at one point on kits with arms that you could basically oppose however you wanted. However, I remember from putting those things together, it just didn't work. Your arms would just be too easy to fall off. So I kind of get why they tried to make it so that the kits were like, hey, oppose every single arm. But in the old world, actually, that was terrible because your ranking would just suffer for it. There's no other way to put it. Okay, what else have we got here? Yeah, you can see here as well, someone's got themselves a pet bird. Again, you can tell it's an older sculpt. The quality, what you might see in a modern accessory like that, just isn't there. So I think the key thing to remember with this is you have to accept, if you're doing this, that you are getting old models. In the future, I have no doubt that they might start refreshing the ranges if the old hammer proves to be worth the cost, basically. Okay, so here we've got, a couple of selection of wings, assume for the Pegasus, and some horses' heads. I'm not going to get these out, but you can see that they're very, straightforward. At least they have some kind of feeling of style in those appearances. I'm not, they look okay. They're not like really bad like the old ones used to be. The chainmail, you can see this is where things like that chainmail there. It's probably hard to see on camera. I might have to just get it out. So this is how you can usually tell a kind of older sculpt. The chainmail is basically where it looks to me like someone got green stuff, modelling putty, and then of course with a very fine modelling tool, or maybe even a cocktail stick, individually pocked those in. You can tell those old school concepts. But then you contrast that to something like these wings, where you can see the quills on each individual feather, can't you? It's like very, very detailed. So quite interesting how the kit seems to have quite a bit of a range of styles and, you know, quality. Right, this is a 2023 model. It's a new model. So this is where we can see something a bit more interesting. So this is probably the champion, isn't it? Let's look at some key things here. Look at the size of this. If this is his head here, yeah, there's another example of a head. This is where we're going to have a problem in my mind. Because Games Workshop have engaged in a little bit of downscaling on things like heads. You can see, or hopefully you can see, I mean, it's not exactly easy to see, I'm not going to deny it. But, you know, this is a newer model and it feels like the head is slightly smaller. Whether or not the body plan is smaller. So the body plan seems to be about the same, but that's, as I understand it, that's because Games Workshop has been trying to move towards basically the same kind of body plans, you know, same realistic body plans on a lot of miniatures. When people first saw the new Cadians, they were like, they look weird, and it's like, well, actually no, there's a good chance that they're actually designed to look real. Anyway, so that kind of does cause an impact when you have an older range and you're moving towards a newer range, and the body plans and the head sizes are different, because it can cause a discontinuity. Even things like arm sizes. I reckon if I pulled a lanced arm, yeah, look, I mean, it just feels, that arm there, you can see it's just not as, it just doesn't feel anywhere near as bulky. The hand isn't as big. You know, is it an issue? Am I going to notice when they're all together? Is it going to bug me? I don't think so, but I think we do have to bring these things up. I can't review a box set like this and basically turn around and go, oh, I you know, I like everything, or I don't like anything. Right. So, you know what, though? It is a difficult one, isn't it, guys? Because, guys and girls and other... Gosh, that sounded weird. Not about the other thing, I said it clunkily and badly. So, do apologise. Anyway, so, I'm not going to open the rule book yet. Oh, I'll do that some other time, to be quite honest. That'll be like a very separate review, but you can see it's quite a weighty tome. Very clear, you know, very heavy hardback book, as you would expect. You know, quite frankly, if we had a box like this and they gave me a flap of paper and said, "There's your rule book," I would be very annoyed. Gosh, I don't have my old Warhammer book, so I'm gonna flag something that immediately hits me about this. This is blue. And well, okay, it's blue. I'm pretty certain it was quite traditional for old world books to be red initially. So I'm trying to think what colour scheme the Age of Sigmar uses, and if that's to distinguish them. I like the blue. It feels and looks good. When I look at it, it's got very it feels more refined than red, which you would want when you're dealing with the old world. You know, you want to feel like it, even though it's a hideous place to live, it is a time of, you know, legends and heroes and chivalry. So a certain amount of refinement is a good piece of psychology, isn't it? I'm not going to open it yet. I'm just going to keep it like that. Okay. Whew. This is a big box to dig into, isn't it, guys? Everybody. I use guys neutrally. Honestly, I do. It's I get told off by my class by constantly using guys all the time. Okay. here's our kind of assembly. The knights look like they're going to be quite a hectic job of assembly. However, because they're so similar, there's going to be an easy build there. Same with the Pegasus Knights. The troops themselves look like they're going to be very easy to put together. Let's have a look. Bretonnia Lord on Pegasus. Yeah, that's one of our big boys, isn't it? You see, this is the thing. I've got this. I'm sure this is our Bretonnian Lord. I'm trying to work out where the actual Pegasus is itself. See, yeah, maybe I've missed it. No, I haven't. Oh, yeah, well, I've kind of have. That's it, isn't it? Yeah. I think. Yeah, that's him. Can't believe I must have picked it up. I'm not proper. Yeah, because I talked about the wings, isn't it? So yeah, this is actually a new sculpt. Yeah, but you know, it fits actually. So do you know what? I was convinced this was an old sculpt, and I've just realised it's the new one because it's been made to work with the old range. So I actually didn't realise this was a new sculpt. So it fits with the range. That's quite good. I'm glad about that. But obviously, you know, it's quite interesting that has been, you know, they've said, right, we're not going to make it look insanely new. We're going to make it look like it was made back in 2003 to match the Force. What else have we got here? Got some quite interesting little features on this guy, isn't it? So, Army of the Duke Gastil, the Red Hand. It's nice. So yeah, we got the army book, and we've got explanations of certain formations to deal with, which is nice. And I think now we're on to this stage now, the bases. So one thing that I was made aware of is they were upsizing the bases. Now, this is where I'm just going to go grab an Age of Sigmar model. I'm curious about something. I was saying to myself, if you have, say, a Gloomspite Gitz army, this isn't Gloomspite Gitz, this is a Sylvaneth, but, you know, if you have a Gloomspite Gitz army and you wanted to make them Night Goblins, would you need to rebase them? Or could you get some kind of converter? Now, looking at that base size compared to that one, now I think that's probably what you might call a standard Age of Sigmar base. You wouldn't, it's obvious, isn't it? You would not be able to just rebase your Gloomspite Gitz by the look of it. Let me just double check. Let me find a Gloomspite guy. I must have a Gloomspite around, I usually do. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, so it's definitely clear cut, that, isn't it? It's unlikely that you'll just be able to rebase them. That's the impression I'm getting there anyway. It's different if they're all on very small bases, because see, here's the thing, like if they're on a small base, the small base perfectly fits into that square. So maybe you could get a base converter for things like your Gloomspite Gitz and use them in Oldhammer as Night Goblins. Let's hope that that's possible. Of course, to do that, I need to see the new Orc and Goblin forces, and they're not here yet, are they? Okay, we've got some transfers floating around at the bottom here. No doubt about it, these are going to be old school. Yep, old school as I thought. Hard to see because they're very white. But again, if you want to put them on a force, a customary bag of dice, customary bag of die, multiple dice. Okay, so, well, what's my final thoughts on this? Well, geez, now, this is a tough one, okay? Because we have to ask ourselves some core questions when we're judging a kit like this, aren't we? The first is it worth it? Is it worth that £155 price tag? Okay, I'm gonna I'm going to roll myself back here to when I first started Warhammer. So the year is 1993, I believe, around about that time. And I got my first full army. Now, back then, what Games Workshop would do is they would do a battle, and then at the back, they would actually tell you how much that army could cost to buy. And they usually hit around about the £100 mark for, again, a set of fully metal miniatures. So we're talking about fully metal miniatures back then, for around about £100 for the full army. I think you would have expected 20 figures per unit. So, 20 figures per unit. You would have potentially got, again, I've got to make sure that nostalgia's not clouding my vision here, because I could be wrong. And if I'm wrong, then I'm not fairly representing this kit and the price. But I would expect that I might have got, I'm trying to remember, I think in that army, I think I probably got 20 Dwarven Warriors, 10 Longbeards, 10 to 20 Slayers, can't quite remember, a cannon, a hero. But it feels like I got more than that for £100. In my head, I'm thinking maybe I got an extra unit of clansmen for that. It's there whistling in my head. What did I actually get? I think maybe I got 10 crossbowmen as well for that. It's a hard one, isn't it? How much did I actually get? Problem is my phone's recording, so I can't use my phone to just check that quickly. But, okay, so if that's what we got way back in 1993. So, is this the same amount? Probably not. Is it half the amount? I can't be confident. I can't stand on my kind of soapbox and say, yeah, you only get half what you did back then. I don't know. It's strange to think, isn't it? You can't be certain. Do I begrudge spending £155 on this? No. I don't begrudge it. I don't feel let down by what's in the box. So from that point of view, I'm not sitting here going, that's not enough for 155 quid. But again, you've got to kind of go back in time, thinking back to around about 2000, I see, this is the thing, it's hard to look back and guess things. Maybe £15 for a unit of 10, so you would have got 100 models for 100 quid, and not 100 models, call it 80 models potentially for 100 quid. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So yeah, it's a tough one, isn't it? But I don't begrudge spending this money, but by the same logic, of course, it makes you wonder, is the price point, could it have been cheaper? I don't think they could have done it cheaper either. Maybe could they have knocked 30 quid off it? I don't know. It really is like kind of making me scratch my head right now. I think what I would need to do to make a fair judgment is actually sit down and truly look up the real prices on that one. Maybe that's something I should have done. Contrasted it backwards, really kind of drilled myself in and said, going back X number of years, we would have got all of these models for 90. So if I could go back and say for 90 quid you would have got all of this, then it would have been a better one. But then, if that was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, well, of course, you have, inflation makes fools of us all, doesn't it? Right, so there we go. I would love to hear your thoughts about this Bretonnian kit. I want to know if you think it's worth it. You know, every single person is different. Every single person has a right to say, no, it ain't. They're ripping you off. Or, do you know what? I'm happy. You know, I can live with the price. I want more of them. In fact, I'd buy 2 if I could afford it. So I think this is quite an interesting little foray into this kit. It's a very interesting thing to look back on things like this and say to yourself, well, you know, this is something I did for years. You know, this game. Bretonnia and the Tomb Kings were not my thing. I have no doubt that if they release a Dwarven Mountain Hold, there's absolutely no doubt I am going to scream, shut up and take my money. That thing, well, this thing never really even hit the shelf before I snapped it up, but the Mountain Hold, probably I would have bought it before it even got there. Yeah, it's that simple. So yeah, I think we've drilled into this. As I said, there is no right and wrong on these things. There is no, yes, I think it's worth it, but it ain't, let's have an argument, because to each their own on these kind of things. So from my point of view, I don't have an issue with what has been spent to get this. But it is a tough one about whether or not they should have updated the range. Yeah. I don't know about that. I don't know right now if they should have updated the range. You know, my heart says no, but my head says yes. What do you think? I'm sorry for the long video. I hope it's been interesting. Please like and subscribe. Please comment, okay? And tell me if you think I'm right, if you think I'm wrong about this, yeah? But be respectful if anyone else comments and disagrees with you, or if you disagree with someone else. I will see you for the Tomb Kings.